It is 2 o'clock and you are welcome to start the meeting whenever the motion takes you.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Okay, call this meeting of the Aeronautics Commission to order. And if we can get a roll call, Carrie.
Dustin Coleman.
Here.
Court Eklund.
Here.
David Howard.
Here.
Ralph Johnson. Ivan Venner.
Here.
Bob Huggins.
Right here.
You have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Do we have any conflicts of interest to report?
Just a question about that. If item 3 on the agenda obviously is going to involve a winner, but I would assume there probably would not be a vote or anything that I would need to recuse myself from.
Oh, for the,
Just the discussion, I don't know how that works.
hey, Dustin? Yeah?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I did hear that question.
Yeah, basically, Commissioner Howard, it's your wife's the manager?
Yes.
Item 3 on our agenda has to do with, allowing for revenue generating projects possibly at the airports. Like I say, his wife is the manager of Winter. If we have any sort of a vote on that, does he need to recuse himself?
I'm not sure if Mr. Chair, of the previous disclosure that Commissioner Howard has made here, but if he feels it's appropriate, I think recusing from the vote would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, so this is more of an overall aspect, because at this point in time, there is no specific projects that you would be approving today, but more of the concept, or at least the approval, that those projects that are being those categories will eventually have to recuse yourself. So it's your decision as far as what you want to do, but I would agree that at this point, if you're going to change your policy, you're just going to approve it from a blanket statement.
Okay.
We all have conflicts at some airport, so.
Okay, is anything else, anybody else with conflicts? Okay, moving on, looking at last month's agenda, the draft. Anybody have any comments or want to make recommendations or changes?
I got
Yes,
one.
sir.
Partway down on page 2, South Dakota Pilots Associated. It should be association.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, the second.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
I think that is a win.
Okay, and I believe we need to have a motion to approve. Pardon?
With edits.
With the edit, yep, thank you, Carrie.
I can make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion was made by, let's see here, was made by Court, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you, and it was seconded by Dustin Coleman, and that was Court Eklund. So let's have a vote.
Coleman.
Yes.
Eklund.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Venner.
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes. Okay, sounds like it passes. Very good. Okay. Next item on the agenda is, do we have any public input? Anybody on the phone or in the room? Okay, moving right along. Okay, I guess we're up to Secretary Junt already.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I start with the federal, and really there's nothing significant to report today relative to, at least on the aeronautics side of the equation. I did want to go through some of the bills that have now been finalized and spend a little bit of time with there's 3 of them that I wanted to go through, as well as what happened from a budgetary standpoint for us. So I'll start with the budgetary thing. The state legislature did approve DOT's budget, which in essence the entire government from a state aspect, but instead of approving the governor's recommended budget for us, they did reduce our budget authority, specifically in the construction funding line. So this is a line item that we need to have the authority to expenditure relative to highways, bridges, and aeronautics projects. So we had asked for $969.6 million, and they cut that by $20 million. So what that means to us in those three areas, as we're making expenditures, letting projects, as well as paying back contractors, we'll have to be attuned to see if we're going to hit up against that budget authority, and if we are, we're gonna have to ask for additional budget authority later on, and that would probably be at the next legislative session next year. So again, that's for 2027. We don't see a major concern with that. In fact, I was there with the Joint Committee of Appropriations and stated that we were okay with that, but we would have to watch it in the end. So I don't think that's anything on the radar screen that you guys need to be concerned about, but we will continue to monitor that, and if it gets to a point in time, and I would imagine definitely we'll know prior to next session where that might be at relatively. And again, for the aeronautics program overall, it's not nearly to the degree that the highways and bridges. I mean, you're talking $800 million for that versus $50 to $60 million here, if I've got my numbers right. Three of the bills that have now got to the point where they at least were passed. Senate Bill 76, that's the legislation that was to provide loans for the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Fund for airport infrastructure. It has passed both houses, but it still needs to be signed by the governor. And I would imagine since it was his bill, he'll probably sign the bill. The terms of that loan, the loans are capped at $15 million. There's a 2% interest rate that had changed that from 0 to 2%, and it will be amortized out for 20 years. The loans will be administered by the South Dakota Housing, and when those paybacks do take place, the funds will go back into the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Fund. So again, the only two airports that will qualify the way the legislation ended up being is both Rapid City and Sioux Falls. So again, those are loans, they would have to be paid back at those terms that I mentioned earlier. Senate Bill 219, as you recall, on our discussion in February, that was the bill that Senator Hone had filed, which would require state agencies consult with you, the Aeronautics Commission, when purchasing or transferring or disposing any state-owned or operated aircraft. That also included any drones, because drones in law are considered aircraft. The bill was amended twice. To remove and eliminate the drone requirement, as well as to exempt the Board of Regents and the Board of Technical Education, with a qualifier on there that the institution of that higher education, the board has to determine that the primary use of that aircraft is for educational purposes only. So if you recall, current statute requires you guys to provide technical advice and expertise to a state agency on the topic, but the statute was silent whether or not the agency had to come to you. Now with this bill as being passed and signed by the governor, they will be required to come to you, and you will not only have to provide the advice and the expertise, but you have to do that in a written report to the governor and to the consultant agency. The bill does not take effect until July 1st for 2026, so at this point in time with HP, it's not pertinent to that discussion that we've had. The other bill was Senate Bill 2005, and again, this bill would have revised the registration fees for drones, and to, in essence, the way that those are set up right now are those funds come into your aeronautics fund, and under this bill, they would have been diverted out of going into our fund and put into a new fund controlled by the Board of Technical Education for their use. So again, registration fees for the drones in those last 3 years were about a little over $70,000, $70,677, and that continues to grow. As of this last year, it was $47,277. We lobbied very hard in opposition of this bill based on the concerns of it coming out out of your fund and being able to utilize those funds, as we feel it's pretty critical that you have those funds to be able to do what you're really wanting to do, especially on the airport improvement program. The bill did die in the House, they did not pass it, they did not have enough votes to move that forward, and so with that, I did reach out to the Board of Technical Education. Mr. Nick Wendell is the Executive Director, and with that, they were silent and did not lobby in support of the bill. He understood the concerns in their aspect of it, but my discussion with him was more based on if there was any interest on your guys' end relative to looking at that, and if there's a mechanism that you would like to provide from a funding standpoint, especially in the area of promoting aviation with drones, what his thoughts were. And he stated that really there's two technical colleges, Lake Area Technical College and Mitchell Technical, that could benefit from some funding relative to this area. And he had some ideas, but I really wanted for you guys to have some discussion on that. And if you had any interest in providing some funding, that you would ask him to come at the next meeting, put it on the agenda, and just have some dialogue and see what that might look like overall, both for you and what it could provide for them as a board. So I think, Mr. Chair, maybe just a pause on that one to see what you guys might wanna do relative to this.
For myself, I would like to know what they would expend the funds on. Are they just buying more, drones, better drones that do different things? Before we shell out the money, just know what they're gonna do with it.
The drone part of the market is changing as we speak. And it's not gonna be just the ones going up to take cameras fairly soon. And it could make a huge difference in the future, in the fairly near future.
And that was my discussion with a number of legislators. The drone right now might just be for agricultural, but if you look at some of the southern states, they're already making deliveries with drones, and eventually someday there's going to be passenger drones that are gonna be flying people. So don't be so short-sighted and say, all right, it's not here today, but your point is very, very relative for what I explained to them, Commissioner. So why don't I just get back with Mr. Wendell and ask him, we'll put it on the agenda for next time, and you guys can have a dialogue relative to this. And again, it was about $50,000, which really equated to $2 million of power from a API program that you guys would have lost, so we'll see where that goes. So that's my report. Unless there's any questions with this, we'll maybe move on to the Highway Patrol topic.
Okay.
Mr. Sheriff, you're good with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll leave Colonel and Secretary Perry will come up, and on attachment 2, you have the answers to the question that were posed at the last meeting, as well as perhaps some additional follow-up with that, so I'll turn it over to Colonel.
Yeah, Casey Collins, Superintendent of the Highway Patrol, good to see you all again. Obviously, the main run of legislative session wrapped up, and so Senate Bill 69 passed both houses. It's been delivered to the governor. You probably know that. So that anticipating the governor's signature there, obviously. So that awards us $5 million for an aircraft and mission equipment. We've kind of had conversations the last time about the type of aircraft we're looking at, and really I think there's probably two that stick out, or we've been advised, and that's the Kodiak 100 or the Cessna Caravan. I'll kind of pause there and maybe I'm incorrect, or maybe if you have any questions on those, that's kind of where the two aircraft that we've been focused on. But at this point, we haven't reached out to a broker because the bill hasn't been signed. So we're working with procurement, trying to figure out what the best process is, and there's a state contract process. If it's over 50,000, it needs to have an RFP, and so we intend to obviously work through that first. But questions on that before I kind of go where we're at any further, or any feedback or?
And when would you look to have the aircraft? What time frame are we looking at?
Great question. So the bill has an emergency clause on it, so my understanding of that is when the governor signs it, then we can move forward. We don't have to wait for the July 1st. And part of the reason behind that was, we're in the used market, so we don't really control what we're buying there. We're kind of looking for the best aircraft, and we want to be available to do that when it comes up, so.
And then how long, so once you do pick and get the aircraft, to get the cameras and everything, is that kind of a quick thing to get it implemented and flying?
I don't know, probably not, to answer your question, Mr. Chair, I think, we would like it probably a lot faster that's gonna happen, but, the 206 has life left, so that gives us some opportunity to still have that aircraft operational until we can get the new one up in the air, so.
And you're going to dispose of the 206 once you get the, whichever aircraft?
Yeah, the intent was to surplus or sell that as part of that process, so.
Do any of the state pilots right now have time in a Kodiak or Caravan?
So our pilot does not, I don't know if your pilots would, obviously the engine is the same or similar, I'm told, but no, to answer your question, I don't believe so.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
This is the advice that, yeah.
Yeah.
We're here, yeah, this is just a suggestion. If you're looking at those two airplanes, there is an organization out there called Mission Aviation Fellowship. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. I think their headquarters is in Idaho or Montana, I'm not sure. But they actually fly both of those airplanes all over the world.
Sure.
And could very easily address which one might work the best for you. It might be worth a call.
Yeah, absolutely. Mission Aviation.
Mission Aviation Fellowship, MEF.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's, like the secretary said, that's what we're looking for is the advice there, and, we don't wanna do this again, certainly in my time, we want this to be a long-lasting asset, so we wanna make sure we get it right. I think I kinda covered most of the rest of the procurement process, but any questions on that or any other advice that?
So you mentioned you're looking for a used aircraft. So, and how, is the camera set up pretty well, a set price and then already?
Well, we haven't picked the exact camera yet. We've got a couple options, and I think I sent those in that material the last time is the West Cam, and I think a Tracom was maybe the two. But that's what we're seeing in the industry or what we're being advised, but we haven't said, hey, we're buying that camera, so that could vary a little bit, and, to be honest, I don't know that they're super transparent in their pricing until you say, hey, we want this camera on this plane, and that's what it looks like, so, that's another issue we've gotta work through, but that type of camera is what we're looking for.
Right. I was just trying to, what's the budget for the plane alone, or what's that portion of the 5 million for just the plane, I guess?
The estimates we had was 3 million for the plane and 2 for the technology in it, 1.3 was what we were hearing for the camera.
If I made it, that's the cost of the camera, you have all the installation.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Gotta send it somewhere to get all installed and.
Is there anything you want from us, anything that any questions for us?
No, I would just say that the advice or the expertise, if you think we're going down the right path, or if you don't, please let us know, and we'll make adjustments, obviously, and like I said, we want to get it right, so.
So right now, the 206 is flyable until, hopefully until you get the airplane.
Yep.
Okay. Any indication from the governor when he's going to sign this bill?
Early next week.
Oh, okay.
He's running out of time. He only gets so much time to sign a bill, I think, so it's early next week.
Okay.
Definitely would have to do it before veto day, but
Yes.
the following Monday.
Okay, so we're talking that, you're gonna get something better here shortly.
If I may, I think one of our sticking points right now is getting procurement to tell us what we need to do as far as an RFP to hire a broker, and then does that cover also the airplane, or the mission equipment, or do we have to do RFPs for all 3 pieces? So we're looking for guidance from state procurement to start, and so that's where we're kinda stuck right now.
This is a standard purchase.
So do you need anything else from us? So once the governor signs, are we good to go? Or do we need to have like a vote saying that, yes, you guys can, do it?
No, I think from where you're at today, providing that advice, expertise as what's in the law, and from there, I think they should be good to go. Again, making sure that they follow the requirements relative to procurement and all that. We went through this when we purchased the 350, so again, if you need any, I can do back my old emails and all the other stuff that we went through when we acquired it, as well as, you know, the selling of the old plan that you have, and again, we use the broker to do that too.
I think you shared his name with us previously,
Yep.
we both have that, so. Then we have other brokers, one's a camera person who's also a broker, but, yeah, he might want the job so that he gets the camera equipment locked in. I'd say, we've never done this before, either of us for sure, so. it's a
I think
process.
once procurement lets us know if it needs to go out for an RFP, that'll help kinda give that competitive process its due process or whatever you wanna call it.
If you have to go to RFPs, is that a major, like a long drug out thing, or, I guess I don't know what an RFP is. Right, but it doesn't take,
I think our folks at procurement are pretty good at, they do it all the time with state purchases, so I think it's, we don't do it a whole lot at highway patrol, but every time we do, we ask them what we intend to buy, and they make sure we follow the law and do that, so.
I think they
pretty
have
well
to
set up.
give them a certain amount of time to respond, so they put that, it's
Are we
like
talking-
putting it out for bid,
are we talking a month, 2 months, 3 years?
Know what the time frame, no, hopefully never know.
It was definitely a couple months when we went through
Okay.
that. Just, you wanna give them ample enough time to provide you
So you can get it by
a
Sturgis.
proposal, and then you physically gotta go through the proposals and rank them, just like we normally would with anything else, and then eventually make it a decision based on what's in the proposals.
The question in my mind is it gonna be all one piece, or is it gonna be RFP for the broker, RFP for the plane, RFP for the mission equipment? So that could slow it down if it comes, if we have to do it in pieces.
I guess just for my own knowledge, you know, this is the first time I've been aware of this, just if you let us know, you know, as you know, like where we are on that, you know, okay, yeah, we got the outfit, we're gonna get the plane, it's gonna be delivered, just kind of, just for my own educational purposes.
Absolutely. I've got your email and I got a chain there, so I'll kinda keep you posted where we're at and you can.
Anybody else have questions?
Have they looked at a PC-12 at all?
I haven't heard that, I mean, I've heard that through the medevac aircrafts and that, but I haven't heard that specific one for mention.
I'm not sure it would work at all, that would be a question for Ron or some of those, but if some of the shared entities from the state could use that for something else, it's a much faster airplane, still goes very slow, it's a turbine, so I guess I would just look at it.
Okay.
You know,
Can I ask, the pricing similar or is it?
for used, you're probably looking very similar.
Okay.
Anybody else?
It's a giant cargo door.
I just got one other general question, just a quick summary, you guys have drones, right?
We do.
Just a quick summary of that, like how many, where are they at? You know, Just a general idea, of what you use them for.
Very good, yep. So we have about 25 drones. I think about 10 of those are FLIR capable. We use them for mostly missing person searches. We'll use them for scene mapping or scene pictures. Man, you name it. If we can fly it and it'll give us an advantage, we'll put them up. We're not at the capability of, hey, put it up and map reconstruct a crash scene, you know, yet or those types of things. But just getting that aerial footage on a scene locally is good. We have troopers all over the state that fly them. They're pilots. They have them in the trunk of their car, and so we deploy them. So we're probably, well, we've got some joint SWAT teams with out west in Rapid City and Pennington County, and then to the east side we work well with the teams over there. We're not much in the SWAT drone realm yet, but some of our partners do have that. So you know, your glass breaking and all that.
So you're looking to expand, or are you happy with where the drone operation is?
No, I think Commissioner said it well earlier. You know, I think the drone market is changing so fast, especially in law enforcement, that it's gonna grow significantly for what we can use it for. So no, I think we're doing well, but like anything in law enforcement technology, if you stay still, you're behind, right? You gotta
Okay.
keep moving forward.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to consideration of Aeronautics Commission funding policy, that's attachment 3 in your handout. I might need to phone a friend eventually here with Jack to come up and help us with some of this, but this has been a policy that has been long-standing, and over time, you guys decide what you would like to change relative to this. As you can see, the last time this was modified was in July 20th of 2023. I don't know if you wanna go through the entire policy, or if you just want to hit up on item B 9 and 10, cause that talks about relative to the funding and what you put towards that, so I'm not sure exactly what you wanted to do, but why don't I pause and see where your direction is in the discussion with this.
So with 9 and 10, those were the changes that were made in this revision. From what I've heard, is the funding situation was much different at that time than where we're at now. Where were we at then, I guess, versus now?
And I believe it was prior to 2023 that some of the major cuts took place. And again, staff will have to remind me, but the fund was not looking real well at all. And back then, it actually had gotten swept with, I believe, $5 million from the legislators. So they took that money out of the fund. And eventually, over the years, they have provided, I don't wanna misquote, but at least most of it, if not all of it. And over the years here with COVID, those match rates were 100% federal, so there was no state match, there was no local match that was needed, and that's why we've seen that your fund continue to increase over the years. The $200,000 cap on the terminals for those commercial, which is the 5 airports that are out there, again, was such that the commission at that time did not feel that providing additional money above and beyond was prudent, as opposed to the safety projects that you typically fund relative to AIP. For that line item, which is 9, subparagraph 3 there, with the match rate where it is right now at 2.5%, you maintain that same for terminals, that would amount to an $8 million project. We will be going back to 5% match rate here in next year, so at a 5%, you cut that in half, so a $4 million project would cap out at that $200,000. And John did provide information earlier for me. I asked the question, well, are there any of those commercial airports besides Sioux Falls and Rapid City that is going to be looked at here in the next number of years? And you came back that Aberdeen is looking at a project for $2.5 million in 2030. So again, with that maximum $200,000, it doesn't come anywhere close if you were to provide that 5% match rate. So that's part of the discussion. The other part was item number 10, again, relative to terminals, where the fund was not looking very flush at all with money, and at that point in time, the commission approved to completely eliminate state match on those revenue producing projects, such as the aspect in the terminal building, fuel system, hangars, parking lots, and those things that you see on the current policy for 10. So, you've got about $18 million in there now. I don't know if the discussion is to look back at the revenue producing projects. Kelly has done some numbers on here, so if you wanted to engage in that, what that might be for the next 3 fiscal years, again, at that 5%, because that's what we're anticipating. Well, that's what the feds are gonna be here come next year. So I'll pause again, Mr. Chairman, and see where you would like to go with this discussion.
I guess from Kelly, I would just like to know, where are, you did the projections, and I realize it's just in general, if, you could let us know where you think we're going to go.
Yeah, so, what I looked at was just for the current CIP, 26, 27, 28, and 29. If we increased 1%, so we're currently at 5%, and would move to 6% state match. And, I'm sorry, I did not take into account 26 because we're actually in 26 right now, assuming that's gonna start in 27. That would be, 1% would be an additional 701,000 in, state funds. 28 would be about 326,000 more, and 29 about 432,000 more. That's, again, keep in mind what's in the CIP. Some of it may change, projects may not come to be, but
Based on what the airports have submitted to us for those projects.
correct.
And we're not, can they submit more coming up here? Could that number go up?
I'll defer to John on that.
I missed the gist of that question.
Could it, what Kelly, we were at like 700 some thousand, and then it went down a little bit, then it went down a little bit more. That just seems unusual to me. You think, okay, it's gonna go up as we go further and
Well,
more projects come in, they're going to add to that.
right, they could, as Kelly mentioned, CIPs change the closer we get to the
Right.
next year. And, some of the projections that the airports do as they're looking out 3 years ahead, 4 years ahead, sometimes, sometimes these projects do grow a little bit and the needs become more apparent as you get closer to that year. So, if we're 3, 4 years out, they might not quite be aware of some of the years, maybe their pavement maintenance needs actually increase. We always try to keep that in account, but, for whatever reason, if we have particularly harsh winters, freeze thaws worse than we anticipate, pavement rehab might come up sooner than we thought, those types of things, so it could possibly be. It's our best guess planning.
Okay.
Maybe one thing just to add for numbers, so for 26, we have, and I'm rounding a little bit because I've got some here, so we've got about 90 projects projected in 26.
Okay.
In 27, it's about 50, in 28, 52, and in 29, 47. So as John said, the closer you get, the more refined these numbers are.
If I could add, Mr. Chairman, the key to that is the funding that FAA has and what they're physically going to fund, as some of you guys know. So, not all of that is gonna, perhaps may not get funded, and so those will roll over into the next fiscal year.
Right, and if I could add one more element, as we've seen the project costs increase over the last several years, we're also aware that the entitlements and the AIP funding, as far as entitlements for each different category of airports, has remained pretty much the same for the last 20 years. Now, that's not into account of the IJA funds, because we've had specific programs come up in the last years. We've had Carissa, we've had ARPA, we've got, Bill/IJA. So those have given us some additional money, but as far as just AIP entitlements, those have pretty much remained flat.
Any idea from talking to the airports, what would they, if we do allow revenue producing, are we gonna just get a flood of them, requests from airports? Just a guess, I realize.
Right, so purely a guess, I'm just trying to anticipate based on the needs that are on the CIP, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so because, the airports have been gradually making airport improvements, improving their fuel systems. Some that have had on-demand fueling or manual fueling have been slowly inserting 24/7, credit card systems. They've been adding hangars as time goes, because they have greater need to hangar aircraft, and so that's one of the grant assurances, is that an airport try to remain as self-sufficient as possible, so that revenue coming into the airport helps helps that airport operation. So, I don't see a huge flood of projects, I just see kind of the project come in as they have, as the needs arrive. The revenue projects don't become eligible unless all their airside needs are met. So we continue to have pavement rehabs, pavement maintenance, all those airside needs, safety projects, RPZ grading, we've seen some of those projects. They all have to be met, and then the revenue hangar or revenue fuel is kind of like the gravy on top. And then after they've done that revenue project, they're actually not, eligible to get state apportionment or discretionary for a few years after.
And over the years I've been here and I've seen them, the revenue generating, we have a whole lot more stuff that comes down that we have, for the bigger, like the Rapid Cities and the Sioux Falls and those that, they're really not that big of projects that we're funding money. Am I kind of
They've,
think so?
So you've got a listing of those right now for the next 3 years, right, Kelly?
Yeah, so I just, again, to throw some numbers out, for 26, we have about 10 revenue producing projects. 27, there's 6, 28, there's 5, 29, there's 4. And so figuring out for 26, those 10 projects, if you did the revenue producing at the 50-50 split between the local and the state, that would be 103,000 more in expenditure. You were asking about some dollar amounts, and I don't have the specifics, John would know more, but Bison has construct a revenue producing hangar, total project cost of about 1.6 million. Gettysburg is 242,000, Hoven is 415, Oneida 80,000, so it's kind of.
They're not big projects. Overall, what we sometimes expend, they don't seem to be big projects, so.
and some of those, it's hard to draw comparisons between them, because one of them might be a 2-bay T hangar. One of them might be a big box hangar, an 80 by 60, the 1.4 million, and some of them might be a 2-bay T hangar. So it's, until you look at the details of the projects, it's hard to.
You guys got questions, comments?
I know I think verbally made a policy with airport camera funding, would something at the 75-25, is that something that should go in this as well, or?
It's your guys' policy, so however you would like to frame it up to provide, in essence, guardrails of what you want us to, what you're going to fund relative to these improvements.
Let's talk to the guy that knows more about airports than most of us.
Well, I don't know about that, but the main reason for my question was this. The city of Winter finds itself in a rather unique situation in that they've got some huge expenditures coming up for electricity and things, big transformers, things like that. We're in the process of doing a revenue producing hangar, and the estimates have come in way high. We've pared it down as far as we can possibly pare it and still get what we need. So we've done that. They're sending it out for estimates, trying to get some additional input. And Helms is our engineer, so I just reached out to Mike yesterday, and he said they're coming in quite a bit lower. The estimates, almost low enough that he's worried about the low side as opposed to the high side. So where is it gonna be? He doesn't wanna get to a point where we put it out for bids and then the bids come in way high or something. So the city at this point may not be able to fund it, and the FAA is at 95% this year. It's a very unique situation. So that was just the reason why I thought maybe we could look at options where the state would kick in a little more. The other option that I thought about, and this, you can see what you think about this, instead of making it the state's portion, you could make it actually like a 2% loan or something, if that would be palatable, more than just the state say we're gonna give it the state's portion. To allow those revenue producing things to happen, but then the state would actually get the money back at some point, rather than just a thought.
Two things, Mr. Chairman. One, you do have the ability to do loans if you so desire. Since I've been doing this, that's never been a topic, but I think it's also, and I'm not trying to force you guys to do anything, but you know, as we look at what is projected from overall projects, your fund is not going down a whole lot, and so have you consider that if you've got needs out there for these airports, in my mind, you should be looking to help them in some form or manner, because drawing interest on these funds is not gonna look good. And, you know, to be, they've swept it in the past, so be prudent what you're doing, but at the same point in time, you know, you're trying to promote aviation and everything else, so I think there's dollars in your account that you could help with this. But it's your guys' decision.
That was the words I was looking for. Your guys' opinion that we do have the money.
Yes. And the only major airport improvement you have coming up, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Rapid City Airport, and that's projected in the chart that Kelly had, and that's out there a number of years, and again, probably what they have for pavement condition and everything else is gonna be a big part of that when that physically triggered to be done from a reconstruction standpoint. But even with that in there, your balance is not going down negatively that far.
Well, if that's a few years out, you can always change it again.
You can change it every year, you can change it in 6 months, again, looking at the projection of what you're gonna receive for revenue as versus of what you're gonna get for expenditures based on the airports and what they're providing us on a regular basis.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Brooke Edgar from Health.
Yes, Brooke.
I'd just like to make a couple comments. We're in a unique situation, as John alluded to, with the IJA funding. The smaller GA airports actually have an opportunity to be able to do some of these revenue-producing projects because hangars and fuel systems have been so expensive. You know, even if you save up your entitlements for 4 years, $600,000 isn't going to get you very far. So you're seeing the large number of revenue-producing projects this year and for the next couple of years is because they're finding the opportunity to be able to utilize the IJA funding to maximize the spending and actually be able to do that. As you heard, those numbers are going to go down because each year now, moving forward, is when the IJA funding expires. So you have opportunities for the next few years to be able to take advantage of that. But to build a decent sized hangar is $1 million. So you're seeing several years of these smaller airports bidding a project, bidding a revenue producing project, and then doing another grant or multi-yearing them and actually using their local funds to front end it and then get reimbursed. To be able to pay for that project and make it work. The great thing about the hangars is, in order to be able to be eligible for the NIPIAS program and get the federal funding, the federal minimum, of the $150,000 in entitlements, you have to have 10 based aircraft. And there's a few outliers out there for other extenuating circumstances that get entitlements for other reasons. But promoting aviation and promoting the ability for airports to be able to have hangars to be able to get more based aircraft there, I think, is a great thing for aviation in South Dakota. But additionally, it also gets them to be able to gain a little more revenue. Everyone is aware that land leases are very reasonable in South Dakota, but actually having the ability to get leases for hangar space that the sponsor actually owns is a great source of revenue. Potentially, getting a 4-unit hangar pays for their 5% match on that $150,000 that they can put in the bank, only increasing the opportunities for local sponsors to be able to say, hey, look, how much of our project is coming from aviation fees. We're not taking anything from our general funds anymore. So I agree with Mr. Junt that this is a unique and good opportunity for all of you guys to consider, promoting aviation if you have the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Does anybody have any negative aspects of allowing for revenue producing?
If I could jump in, I mean, you can determine which aspects of revenue producing that you feel at least agreeable to. Again, the ones that are listed here in the policy are terminal buildings, fuel systems, hangars, and parking lots. John, I'm assuming there's probably a few more out there that, none of them are eligible right now.
Correct.
If you wanted to mix and match or say everything is good or nothing, and we're gonna leave it the way it is, I think that's the commission's discretion.
I think this is a good place to start with what we, you know, like the terminals and the parking lots and stuff like that. You know, and if we go back here, we start like that, I think it's just fine. I think, are we ready for a motion to start funding, revenue?
Before you go there, Mr. Chair, I think, John, have any of these been approved for this fiscal year, any revenue producing projects? Because like where I'm going with this, if you've already got some that have done there and you're looking at making this as of today, there'll be some issues with those in the past, or you wanna wait until the end of this current fiscal year and this doesn't come into until 2027. And
That's what I
again,
was
the
thinking,
change of the federal match is going to change come next year from 5% back to 10%.
Correct.
I did go back and look at the past minutes, and there's been no grant awards, other than the one that's on the agenda today.
To make sure that they work.
This will be the first.
So there is one on this.
Right, but it doesn't affect our discussion.
Anything else? Go. Yeah.
The $200,000, are we looking at that at all, or is that, or are we only looking at 10?
Mr. Chairman, could I?
Yeah.
So when Senate Bill 144 was passed 2 or 3 years ago, that money could only be allocated if you did not use any of these funds for terminal projects.
Oh.
So I think that's probably still,
Okay.
sort of in my mind, again, with no projects that are gonna get up to that, at even at the 5% of $4 million range, is probably a non-issue at this point in time.
Okay.
So, do we have a motion to, let's see, we're gonna need to make the motion, and I agree, you know, let's make it for like January 1st. Do we have any motions to, finance, revenue producing projects starting January 1st, 2027?
2027 or 26?
Or do we wanna fund this
You,
year's?
you could start right now, as
Especially if
of your decision today, then all of these will be eligible for state match at whatever percentage.
We got the money.
That's
So-
kind of my thought too.
Okay.
And like you mentioned earlier, we can, if the projections start going down, we can change it
Change
back.
it again. Okay, well, we have a motion.
And this is to basically rescind item 10 on there? I mean, is that,
Guess that's what it would be, to rescind item 10.
At least the first sentence, I think you still would like the discretion to do things on a case-by-case basis, if you wanna
Okay.
do more or less or whatever.
and I do think also it would be good to add the camera system in here, just so it's in writing, so we know going forward, is there any reason not to do that? Yeah.
Make your motion. Do you have something?
Yeah, I'm looking at John. Doesn't the cameras fall under Part C?
I was actually looking at, let's see. I think Part C would probably be inapplicable, section to put it in. It could fall under some of these other state funded, because there's no, you know, there's no AIP eligibility for the cameras. So I think it could fall under C.
They're not really revenue producing.
And they're not revenue
Yeah.
producing. I would sort of see it as sort of a safety type of project.
Yeah, for sure.
as, you know, other types of projects that are safety.
Okay.
Okay,
Could I maybe help with the motion?
thank you.
Yeah, so the motion would be to eliminate sentence 1 under 10,
Okay,
which in essence would make those projects eligible for state funding, and add a, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, Commissioner, but at a certain percent rate, whether that's 2.5% or 5 or whatever you guys want, so. That would,
Well, and so this year it's still 2.5, and next year it's 5. Do we,
I think that would solve the problem. Yep.
so,
And then for the cameras,
you know,
I
we're
think
going
we'd
to
have to, could we maybe wait on that one until next month and come up with what that might actually look like, give us a little time to
Yeah.
provide some, you don't have to change it again.
Okay.
So the motion I have is to eliminate sentence 1 under item number 10 with funding at 2.5% for fiscal year 2026 and as of today, and 5% as of fiscal year 2027 moving
I
forward.
don't think you need the 2.5%. Dustin, are you still on? I think you're making that, you've already got that in place, that you're gonna provide the 2.5% match. I don't think it needs to go into this policy.
I would agree. It seems like we've already addressed that.
revenue generating projects on a
Okay.
case by case basis.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Court. Carrie?
Discussion. Is there any discussion?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll hire you for my lawyer.
Done
Okay,
this once.
discussion? Okay,
Well, Mr. Chairman, just, I think from what the numbers that Kelly has right now, it's not gonna really dent significantly
Right.
your fund amount, so I think this is prudent and helpful overall.
And I think if the airports can have these revenue generating projects, they can be more self-sufficient.
let's keep improving our airports. Yep. Okay, can we have a roll call?
Holman,
Yes.
Eklund,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Venner,
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes. Motion carried, excellent.
And next meeting, we will look at this policy one more time with that, the camera aspect of that. And I don't know if we wanna specifically say camera, or maybe there's more of a general term to help with those things. John can come up,
Airport
came up with
infrastructure.
something.
Wordsmith it.
We'll review the language and which would be the appropriate section to list aviation weather cameras in.
Thank you, John.
The last item under me was attending the airport conference for you folks. In September, you did discuss this, I went back and pulled those, and you had, it didn't actually, I think the only three that could make it was Chairman, Vice Chair Johnson, and Commissioner Howard. You did not vote on those, but since nobody else wanted to go, it was kind of a non-issue, but those were the three that were gonna go. If that's still the case, and this issue is no longer needing to be addressed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can't go, I
Okay.
have conflict, but I guess I would just like to find out, I know historically in the past, sometimes the commission has been there, and I don't know if you schedule a special session or how that works specifically, but it seems to me like you've got all the major players, kind of, you got the FAA, you got the engineers, you've got the airport managers. I think would be advantageous if we could be there somehow for input and interaction with the players in this scenario.
Yeah, and Dustin will have to help me here, but the reason that got modified was based on open meeting laws and not violating those, where you guys are putting yourself in a situation that you don't wanna go there, and so not to have a quorum there with all of these activities that you're wanting to go to, as well as the logistics of how do we physically capture from a note standpoint, from a recording and everything else, cause logistically in Deadwood, it was not possible whatsoever. So maybe we should have another discussion on that in another meeting to provide the new members here kinda some of the basis of what all those open meeting laws were and why it was just not logistically feasible for us.
If we scheduled a meeting though, would that cover any of that at all?
If it is, I mean, if we were to have it in this building in this venue, yes. But all the other activities that go on with the conference, you're not gonna have it all right here.
Well, I guess I would have it at the conference, specifically in the meeting room or whatever, you know, to where the commission would meet and all of those players would have the opportunity to be there, so I don't know how much more open you need than that.
So I can help on this one a little bit. When I first started 7 years ago, that is what would happen. And to have a meeting in a hotel is not easy. To be able to have a discussion where you hear the audience, where the audience can hear the people, it's not, we can't record it, there's a lot of bits and pieces to it. So what had changed is to have the airport conference and then have a conference call meeting that month in order to handle things. When it's here in Pier, the last time it was here in Pier, they had a meeting. And it was here during the conference. You wanna know who showed up? No one. And even when, back when the meeting was there, the people that showed up were not necessarily, they were filling time more than actively participating in the meeting. As far as open meetings laws go, if you were to bring the whole commission to the meeting, to the conference, and you were all there, every class you went to, everything would have to have minutes to everything that you go to. And I am good, but I am not that good.
Plus, you need the public to be able to physically participate, that's what I was looking for. But again, I think it would be helpful for Carla at the next meeting to go through this again, cause it was a change in how things were done many years ago.
In the handbooks that you got are all it was the open meeting laws that you guys will get to sign every July that you've read that. But
So is there somebody, since Commissioner Howard cannot be there, is there another person you'd rather assign to attend? I don't know.
The dates again?
It's a week of April the sixth, I think it's the 7th and the 8th.
7th and 8th, and I do have Ivan registered and Bob is registered.
Okay.
So that leaves one.
So Ralph was the other one that was
Yeah.
identified in the September meeting.
That he was going?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Hey Ralph, are you on?
I have not heard that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be going.
Yes, this is Ivan, and I'll be unable to travel for the airport conference this year.
You're down to.
Me?
Bob.
I'll bring one of my
Okay,
plugins.
I believe that's the end of those items under secretary.
Okay, excellent. Jack, you're up.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We have 3 items for you from the Office of Aeronautics. The first one is an informational item, the 2026 International Art Contest. So, our Aviation Art Contest was held this year. The theme was Fly to Save Lives. Our office received 92 pieces of artwork from 10 different schools. In your attachment 4, the winners are listed. They will receive an award, a laminated copy of their submission, and prizes paid for by the Aeronautics Fund and the South Dakota Pilots Association. We also post all the winning submissions at our website. So this year, it is a little bit different from years past, because typically when I present the art contest winners, it comes with a request to you folks to help pay for the prizes. But it's different this year because last year, after we got permission from you folks to pay for those prizes, everything went on sale and we saved a bunch of money. So we have leftover money from last year is what it ends up being. So that $300 left over from last year, combined with the South Dakota Pilots Association's donation of $600, gives us ample funding to pay for the prizes for these folks. This is one of our most fun projects at the Office of Aeronautics. Nancy does a great job coordinating this. You could imagine this room filled with 92 pieces of children artwork, and then the team goes around and scores them and picks the winners. So it's pretty neat. And actually, for the new commissioners out there, a couple years ago we had a young lady actually place in the top 3 internationally and won. So that was pretty neat. And then we always show the artwork at the conference too. So yeah, this is just an informational item. We don't need money this year. So do you have any questions on the art contest?
So we'll make a motion not to pay you any money.
There you go. The next 2 items under me are consideration of marker cones and then consideration for a grant application. The marker cones are gonna be presented by Tom. It's part of his program, so Tom, take it away.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In order to improve safety at our public use airports across the state, we have 5 airports that need plastic marker cones, and these are the white ones with the black tips. We need these to replace the existing metal A-frame markers, and we have some airports that want to put up new segmented circles, and these work great for that. And to support these safety and appearance enhancements, our department recommends that the commission authorize the use of aeronautics funds to purchase 210 of these at a cost of $47.85 each, and with a shipping cost of $938.17, and the total would be $10,484.24. But we are asking on the paragraph below for an additional 10% of this, because the vendor can only guarantee a shipping quote for 7 days with the volatility of the oil prices these days. It's hard for them to nail down any sort of a quote. So we're recommending a total authorization for $11,532.66.
Do we have a motion to approve our discussion on this?
Which are the 5 airports?
Oh, Oneida, Wagner, Edgemont, Bowdle, and Howard.
Discussion?
Where are those made?
Oh, they're made in Wisconsin, eastern Wisconsin, just north of, the name of the town is Kono or something like that, but it's northeast of Green Bay, so. Conomowoc, close to Oconomowoc, yeah.
With Howard, isn't Howard on the, well, I thought, didn't we revoke their license?
You did, Commissioner, they did get the trees addressed, and so they got their airport operating certificate back, so they're in good standing again.
Okay.
Any other? Okay, we have a motion to approve the airport marker cone request for $11,532.66.
Venner makes a motion to approve the 210 marker cones for $11,532.66.
Okay, we have a motion from Ivan and a second from Commissioner Howard. Any other discussion? I guess we're ready for a roll call.
Coleman,
Yes.
Eklund,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Venner,
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
I have a single grant application for you this afternoon. This would be the first one of the 2026 season. And as it does include the state share from the state airport terminal program grant, I wanted to give you a little bit of information about that program. So this is regarding Senate Bill 144. During the 2024 legislative session, SB 144 was passed allocating $10 million in one-time funding from the state's general fund to the Aeronautics Commission. The funds were designated for grants supporting airport terminal improvement and expansion projects at public airports statewide. At this commission's May 23rd, 2024 meeting, the commission approved the South Dakota Airport Terminal Program grant application process. All these projects must align with the airport's capital improvement plan and have committed either AIP or bill funding and not exceed the 60% state match. So grant agreements were executed following commission guidelines. The grant that I have today is for the Sioux Falls Passenger Terminal expansion is one of these grants. And the funding is derived from the SD Airport Terminal Program. So the grant application is Sioux Falls. It's grant number 69 for Sioux Falls -2026. So it uses IJA funds, and the specific subcategory is airport terminal funds. So that is their federal bill or IJA terminal funds for phase one construction of their terminal. So the federal share in this project is $2 million. The state share is again from the SB 144 funds, and Sioux Falls' funds for that is $2,561,801. And so you can see the total project is $23,267,698.
Discussion, questions? I'm new here, so maybe this is a stupid question, but where's the other funds coming from, the 16 million?
So because Sioux Falls and Rapid Cities have these enormous terminal projects, they are getting funding from everywhere that they can. So, and unfortunately, I should have the breakdown for this. I did not bring it with me here. I can share that with you. But the applicant share, obviously, that is local funds. So from Sioux Falls, so that's the $1,852,917. The 16 million is from a variety of other sources. And like I said, I'm sorry, I don't have those other sources here for you.
What would be an example of another source?
Well, in some of these projects, you might see the CDS or the congressional directed spending. Now, that's not this one. I think it would be designated as congressional directed spending. But I think previous phases and probably upcoming phases may have some of that, but you know, other funds as they're able to get. You know, we heard Secretary Jun talk about the bill from this legislative session on terminal projects. So Sioux Falls and Rapid City are able to get, you know, some funds from that program, loans, correct?
And by taking this funds, then they don't get the 200,000 of that other for the terminal, correct?
That is correct.
That was part of the legislation.
That is correct. These terminal projects had already hit their cap, their $2 million cap. And I think that was one of the driving forces between the legislation from 2024 for this SD ATP program.
Phase one, is there more phases that are gonna be coming down the road?
There is, and once again, there's a large project breakdown for this, and I can share that with you. Sometimes we sort of walk a balance between giving you too little information and too much, because these application packets are are quite large and, I could break out that specific part for you and share that with you so you can see the.
I don't know if these guys, I was just wondering, yeah, there's gonna be multiple, but now if I remember though, as far, just thinking that of our money, the 200,000, can't be broken down into various phases to get that more often, so we're clear with that. If there's 30-some phases, we're clear 30-some times, okay. Any other questions? Okay, can we get a motion to approve the Airport Improvement Program Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant for Sioux Falls in the amount of, see, this would just be our share, right?
Right.
For the $2,561,801.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Coleman or Commissioner Coleman. Anybody else?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard's the second. Any further discussion? Go with a roll call.
Coleman,
Yes.
Eklund,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Benner,
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes. Carry. Okay, I think that is all we've got. Do we have any other public input?
Hello.
Hello, yes.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is Joy Hone, Senator for District 9, and I just wanted to thank the commissioners, Colonel Collins and Secretary Perry, for the briefing and the discussions on the Highway Patrol airplane. I also have been hearing concerns, as indicated by Commissioner Howard, on the quorum to the open meetings for this upcoming airport conference on April 8th. And so I do think it's important for the commission to take another look and review that. Technology has changed since, I believe it was discussed 8 years ago was the last time this was attempted. And the aviation community, I'm getting a feeling that they are becoming more involved and would like to have that interaction with the Aeronautics Commission. So if you could maybe look into that for next year, that would be wonderful.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know if you were able to listen in earlier, Senator, but at the next meeting, we're gonna kinda go through some of that again. I think it would be worthwhile for you to be able to at least listen in to see at least our reasoning for that, which is, not to break your laws, so. I think we could have some more good dialogue
Right.
on that.
Right, I understand that. And so that is one thing that, maybe possibly could be changed prior to the next year's conference. So just a thought.
But wouldn't that take congressional action?
No, it's state legislators, which Senator
But that's what I mean.
Owen is a part of, yep. And again, there was a briefing that the Attorney General's office Commissioner was here, but the new ones were not, and kinda gave more details as far as what you can and cannot do, we did some, so again, if it's prudent, we should bring that back again. I don't think it's relative for this conference based on what we're at, but maybe in a future one, closer to the next year, we can do that. As well as if Senator is looking at making bringing a bill, we definitely want that for her to have that discussion prior to her filing deadline for next year's legislative session.
That would be great, and I plan to listen to the next meeting, and I would value all your input on that.
Anything else, Senator?
No, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, we're gonna be using you for a lot of help. You understand aviation, so thank you.
Yes, please reach out. I'm more than willing to help.
Okay, anything else? We're 16 minutes over what I usually try to run these at, so I call this meeting adjourned.
You are listening to South Dakota Public Broadcasting's live webcast service on the South Dakota Network. More information at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Follow us on Twitter at SDNet for announcements about what's coming up. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Download the SDNet app to your mobile device and listen wherever you are. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net. You are listening to South Dakota Public Broadcasting's live webcast service on the South Dakota Network. More information at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Follow us on Twitter at SDNet for announcements about what's coming up. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Download the SDNet app to your mobile device and listen wherever you are. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net. You are listening to South Dakota Public Broadcasting's live webcast service on the South Dakota Network. More information at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net.
Thank you.